There's just a little over a month left until the NBA playoffs begin, and although the defending champs Denver Nuggets and Boston Celtics are big favorites in their respective conferences, everything indicates that this year's postseason will be one of the craziest so far. The race for the first place in the West is still ongoing, while the East has green colored all over it. Another fun thing this year will be the play-ins, which will actually be a mini playoffs before the real playoffs start. Although it is very difficult to know in advance how the games will play out, we will try to predict the most likely outcomes based on what we have seen from the teams so far. Hello basketball fans, and welcome back to Hoop Vision. We'll start off with the Eastern Conference and simulate the playoffs as if they were to begin with the current league standings. Round 1 would be made of Boston versus the 8th seed team, Bucks versus the 7th seed, Cavs against the Pacers, and New York would play Orlando. The Celtics will probably have an easy time regardless of who wins the 8th seed play-in spot. The winner of the Bulls and Hawks matchup would face the loser of the Heat and Sixers series, so whoever comes out on top of that will have the hardest task of all. Yes, you might say Miami is Boston's kryptonite, but they're completely different teams this year. The Heat are 0-3 against the C's this season, so there's no reason to expect anything different in case they meet in the playoffs.
Miami is up 3-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals.
The 2nd seed Bucks should also have no trouble dealing with any of the play-ins teams. The Sixers might, and this is a big might, take 2 games away from them, but this is a stretch. Milwaukee is 3-0 against Philly this year, so nothing amazing to be seen here as well. The last 2 matchups are much more interesting as teams are more balanced in terms of power. The Cavs are in a special kind of situation since there's a lot of content online about Donovan Mitchell supposedly wanting out of Cleveland after this season, but their game speaks the opposite. The series between them and the Pacers should be the most interesting one since all of their games this year have been really close. It's hard to tell which duo will prevail, Mitchell and Allen or Halliburton and Siakam, but either way, a fun series is guaranteed. For the sake of the video, we'll give this edge to Indiana, simply because of their 2-1 record over the Cavs this year. And lastly, Knicks at 4 versus the Magic at 5 shows us all promising signs of being a banger. New York is currently 43-28, while Orlando is 42-29. It's like they're the same team. The Knicks, however, seem to have more experience and firepower in their sleeve. Brunson is having his best season ever, Randall and Anunoby should give him a solid amount of help, and the acquisition of Bojan Bogdanovic was such an underestimated trade move. Orlando is indeed 3-1 against the Knicks this season, but the record itself doesn't provide the full picture between these two. The Knicks are way more experienced, and as we know, the playoffs are entirely a different ballgame, so New York takes the edge in this series. This simulated turn of events would lead us to the following Eastern semis: Boston, New York, and Milwaukee, Indiana. The Celtics would wipe the floor with the Knicks as expected, but the Bucks versus Pacers matchup raises plenty of questions, and here's why. The Pacers are 4-1 against Milwaukee this season, and that one loss came after Giannis scored 64 points. The Bucks have massive problems on defense this year, and they can't rely on Giannis to score 50+ every other night and carry them to the finals. Yes, Dame is also there, but it's just that Indiana seems to be Milwaukee's kryptonite. There's also a huge question of Doc Rivers' coaching, especially in the playoffs. If something doesn't change drastically, we might see the Pacers go 4-1 once again and reach the Eastern Conference Finals. Celtics and Pacers fighting for the spot in the NBA Finals is not something many would predict at the beginning of the season, but here we are. After all, the NBA is where amazing happens, and that's exactly what this series would be. Indiana is 2-3 against the C's this season, so they've definitely shown they can cause them trouble. However, Boston has just too much firepower, so in a 4-game series, we don't see the Pacers taking more than 2 of them max. In the Eastern Finals, we'll give the edge to the Celtics because, well, they've been crushing everyone this year, and their 32-3 home record shows they won't be letting anyone take 4 games away from them. Now that we've dealt with the West, it's time for a more complicated situation. The West will be a real mayhem, and predicting the one team that will come out on top is no easy task. If your favorite team doesn't move past our predictions, remember we're only basketball fans just like you. If there was a way to predict the outcomes in advance with a 100% certainty, we'd be millionaires after the playoffs for sure. Instead, let's see where our favorite teams stand right now. The West is a mess, and nothing is set in stone despite that we're around 10 games away from the playoffs. The Nuggets are the #1 seed, but both the Wolves and the Thunder are only 2 wins behind. The play-ins will also be lit, and right now the Rockets have joined the race for the 10th spot. If they manage to get in and kick out Golden State, that'll probably be the last straw for the dynasty. However, for the sake of our predictions, we'll include the Warriors, despite them having slim chances this postseason. So if nothing changes, the Dubs will face the Lakers, and the winner of their matchup will face the loser of the duel between the Suns Suns and the Mavs. This is a situation where anyone can win one game against anyone, but on paper, the edge goes to the Lakers and the Suns, meaning the Suns would get the 7th seed and play the Thunder in the first round, while the Lakers and the Mavs would fight for the non-prestigious 8th seed spot and an opportunity to meet the Nuggets. Whoever plays against Denver in the first round faces a potential sweep. The Joker and the rest of the Nuggets have turned on the engines and are playing their best basketball this season. We don't see the Lakers or the Mavs winning 4 games against them, since there's so much depth you need to contend with the current champs, and neither have it this year. In case the Suns take the 7th seed and face OKC, that could provide us with the biggest upset. The Thunder are talented and SGA is amazing, but they're very young and don't have any experience when it comes to big playoffs moments. On the other hand, Booker has played in the finals. KD needs no explanation, Beal can be the wild card for certain games, and Nurkic can give you that crucial stop when needed. It may be too much of a reach, but giving the edge to Phoenix in this series doesn't seem like a bad idea. The third pair in the West would be the Wolves and the Kings, who are both young and so fun to watch. This will probably be the most entertaining series in the West, considering the pure amount of talent on both franchises. Although the Kings are 2-1 against Minnesota this year, the Wolves should take the series in 5 or 6 games. If Sacramento manages to take them to Game 7, this matchup could go either way. But for now, we're giving the edge to the Wolves, who are dominating the conference until recently. Lastly, the Clippers versus the Pelicans is such an underrated matchup that could turn out to be a highlight reel if all the stars show up. Whether Harden and Westbrook have Shaq'd in a full series or they summon up the strength to give us some vintage performances will probably decide the outcome of this duel. Zion and Ingram won't have an easy task going against PG and Kawhi, but injuries have stopped the Clippers so many times now, it's almost bad luck to predict them any postseason success. Imagine the irony if Harden was the piece they needed to break the Clippers' curse. The analysts would go crazy, no doubt about it. If our turn of events proves to be correct, the West would look something like this: Denver versus the Clippers and the Wolves against the Suns. It may be an overstatement, but if the Clippers meet the Nuggets in the Western semis, everything indicates that would be the end of the road for them. Them winning 4 games against Denver just seems impossible from this point of view. Of course, injuries could happen on Denver's side as well, but if we're talking about everyone's health being 100%, Denver takes this in 5 or 6 without a problem. The Wolves-Suns series would be a much more interesting one, since the amount of offensive firepower would be crazy. Booker and KD against Cat and Edwards would be lit, and it's really tough to predict this one because both have stars that could explode and take over crucial games for winning the series. In the end, it'll come down to how productive the main players will be, and if the trio of Beal, Booker, and KD plays their best, we can see them taking over, so we're giving them the edge over the Wolves this time. The Western Conference Finals would then be between the Nuggets and the Suns, a matchup that can be called a rivalry due to what we have seen over a couple of previous seasons. The last time Denver was eliminated by Phoenix was in the 2020-21 conference semis, and they were swept 4-0. Last year, the Nuggets eliminated the Suns in 6 games, but it's a fair argument that KD was added to their roster less than 2 months before the playoffs. If the stars align according to our scenario, they'll have a chance to even the score and fight for this year's ticket to the NBA Finals, where probably the Celtics will be waiting for them. The thought of the NBA Finals between Boston and Denver is enough to cause drooling for any basketball fan. This matchup would be crazy entertaining, and there's definitely a case for both teams winning against the other. However, we'll stop at this point and give you something to think about as the playoffs approach. That's it for today, dear friends. We hope you've enjoyed this video. In case you disagree with our predictions, let us know in the comments below what you think of this year's playoffs and what would you pick differently. Thank you for watching and growing this channel. Make sure you don't miss out on more NBA stories by hitting that subscribe button. See you in the next one.